Hi guys, this is Vineet, and in today's video we will talk about the SQL Server services and clients and how you can manage them. So let's quickly go to our notes. So we will talk about how you can configure various services, components and network capabilities. Basically these controls the access to your server and determine the security levels that control access to the surface area of your server. So we will see how you can configure these services, components and networking capabilities in Microsoft SQL Server. So with each installation of SQL Server, uh, it uses a specific set of configuration, and this configuration determines the security levels that controls the access to the surface area of the SQL Server. And it basically determines who can access your server and by what means or methods. And it also determines how SQL Server components can be connected to or connected to from remote resources. And it also determines which SQL Server services run automatically at Windows startup or, or whether they are automatic or they should be manual. And basically what's the purpose of this configuration and all? So basically that through that we can limit who, what and where aspects of the server configuration, and to basically reduce the server surface area, access to server surface area. And this basically is done to improve the server security and overall performance, as we will only leave necessary services and components as running. Basically, we run SQL Server in a client server configuration method. So if we run a SQL Server or if we access SQL Server in a client server configuration scenario, we access SQL Server through client machines, which basically makes connection to the server machine. So client access to SQL Server can be managed through three modes. One can be OLEDB, another can be ODBC, another one is JDBC, and there may be other access mode as well. And if we're directly accessing the SQL Server from server itself, so that access is managed through SQL native client configuration parameters. And SQL Server access to local and remote sources is determined by the SQL Server services and the network configuration. And the tool which we can use to manage all these three is the services, components, and the network capabilities is the SQL Server Configuration Manager. So let's access this tool. Uh, Let me open up SQL Server Configuration Manager. So this is the tool. Let's open this up. So basically we use this tool to improve the server security. And basically it is suggested to only enable the features which are needed by your organization and disable rest of the features. So whatever is features is required by our applications or clients, we only enable those features. Other can be turned off or we can disable those features. So if only certain components are enabled or if certain components are enabled, it will basically limit the surface area or attack area for the malicious users or hackers. And it basically closes the avenues of potential attacks on the SQL Server. So there are various features. for various components of SQL Server. So some of the components are server database engine, analysis services, reporting services. So we can basically create policies which have these features. So let's see. So here we are getting a list of instances running on this machine. This section is showing us the network configuration, which is currently empty. Next one is the native client, which we were talking about. It has some protocols which should be enabled right now. We can see all of them are enabled. Then we have aliases. Then we have network configuration, 64-bit and for 32-bit. So under that there's a protocols for MS SQL servers for instance 1. So these are two instances, one is default, another one is instance 1. We are running two instances of SQL Server. Then we have some 64-bit native client configuration where we can configure some protocols and the aliases. We will talk about that in a while. Alright, so let's see what we have to discuss next. So let me take you through some of the demos here. So first of all, what we will do, let's go to notes. So first demo will be on how you can manage the SQL Server component access features. So give me a minute here. So we will discuss about the demo on this later. We will talk about this, what are the various features later. So for now, I'm covering up another demo. So basically to configure these component access features, we configure policies, which I will discuss in my upcoming videos. So keep a watch for that. Right now I'm taking you through another demo. And this demo is on, let's see. So this demo is on how you can manage the network and SQL Server native client configuration. So let's cover this here. So let's go back to the SQL Server Activity Monitor. So any of the SQL Server installations on your machine can allow local or remote connections, and these installation can be configured to just allow local connection or allow the remote connections or not. We can disable remote connections as well. And SQL Server uses the various protocols. So for example, if we take the network configuration here, so under this network connection, we have protocols for the default instance of SQL Server. So there are three protocols: TCP/IP, named pipes, and the shared memory protocol. So I see two of them are disabled. The TCP/IP one is disabled. The named pipe is disabled. Only the shared memory one is enabled. So right now to this machine, we are not connecting to it remotely. There's a server where SQL Server is installed itself. So some of the protocols we see are disabled. So if we talk about 32-bit clients, for these, all of the three protocols are enabled, but for 64-bit clients, two of them are disabled, one of them are enabled. So there are basically three protocols which we're discussing: shared memory, named pipes, and TCP/IP. And these protocols all have separate server and client configurations that we can manage using the SQL Server Configuration Manager. So We have shown you how you can open up SQL Server Configuration Manager. You can type it here. And this can be added via snap-in as well. You can open Microsoft Management Console like MMC, and you can add configuration manager as a snap-in here through add and remove snap-in. So if we scroll down, so this is the snap-in available as a snap-in. You can add it here, which basically add the SQL Server Configuration Manager. You can save that snap-in here. But yeah, we have the facility to open the direct rule itself using the SQL Server Configuration Manager over here in search, and it will open up. So the demo will be, we have already logged into database server. Uh, let's close this activity monitor and the previous SQL queries. So we have a local login here. We are not logging into this server remotely. We have a local login because server is here, and we are connected to a default instance. So here we are talking about database server, not the SQL Server Management Server. So minimize this. So we are inside the database server, and we have a local login, and we can open it through start menu as well. So in the programs, you can go to SQL Server 2019, and there is a SQL Server 2019 configuration manager. You can open it from here as well. So all programs, SQL Server 2019, and under that configuration manager is there. Another way to open up is the, let's close this. Let me show you another way to open up the SQL Server Configuration Manager. Press Windows and the R key, and here you can write following: SQL Server Manager 11.msc. Let's see if it opens up. So here the version is, I think, somewhat different. Not sure about this one. You need to check. So here I'm using SQL Server 2019. So maybe 18 should work. Maybe. Let's try. Otherwise, you can check it on net. That can give you much information. So after 2012 to 14, 16, 14, 16, 19. So let's try with 14. So it's not opening up, but yeah, this is the way. Only there's a mismatch of number. You can check it online. To see which command can open the SQL Server Management or the SQL Server Configuration Manager. For now, I'm just opening up it like this. But yeah, let me quickly make a check on the internet. So right now it's open, but yeah, let me make a check to give you the exact command for SQL Server. It's basically version specific, so let me give you a command for. So guys, I've just got the table, so let me take it on notes and let me paste this table for you. So this is the table which you can follow. I got this from Microsoft Docs site. So for if your server version is 2019, you need to type this. So let me show you how you can open up configuration manager through this. So let's close this and run this command. So let's type this. So that can also open up SQL Server Configuration Manager. So right now it's opened. So we have seen there are multiple ways to open SQL Server Configuration Manager. And this can be used to manage the services associated with SQL Server instances, and we can also configure some of the network protocols here. Use network protocols used by the SQL Server instances, and we can also manage the network connectivity configuration over here as well. So there are separate section for 32-bit computers and the 64-bit computers. So there are multiple nodes, and each can be configured separately. So 32 bits nodes are used to manage the 32-bit clients, and the other one is used to manage the 64-bit clients. All right. So, and also make a note of this that the network configuration is set separately for each server instances. So for example, on this machine we are running 2 instances. So the network configuration should be configured separately for each instance by using the SQL Server network configuration node. So for 32-bit it's different, for 64-bit it's different. So for on this machine we are running the 64-bit editions of SQL Server, so the protocols are coming under the 64-bit section under the network configuration. These are 64-bit instances. All right. So let's talk about the protocols here. So if we talk about default instances, I see that there are 3 protocols. One of them is enabled and the other 2 are disabled. So in case all 3 of them are enabled, so what happens then? When multiple client protocols are available and configured for use, so client use the protocols in specified order. So order is this. First it uses the shared memory. Second is it uses the TCP/IP protocol. Third one it uses the named pipes. So this one is used last. First is shared memory. Second one is TCP/IP. So, uh, um, so what is a SQL Server client? So here we configured the client configuration. So what is a SQL Server client? So basically any machine on which you install the SQL Server native client is a SQL Server client. And these clients can be installed on systems that are running Windows 7, Server 2008, Windows 10, any of the machines. You can install the client on. So let me show you if I have the installation available. So let me see if I have saved it somewhere here. Okay, let's open up the add remove programs using the FSCPL. Let's see if SQL Server is present over here. So here we have SQL Server 2000. So I'm doing an install change. Yes. So I want to add certain features. So it is asking me for the installation media, and I'm not sure where that is. Okay, let me see if I can invoke that wizard somewhere from here. Let's close this. Let me check the programs here. So let's see if we can invoke the wizard which allows us to install SQL Server. So let's go to the SQL Server section. So this is the SQL Server installation center. So whenever you insert a media to install SQL Server, it opens up wizard like this. So in order to install client tools can be used to access the SQL Server, and those can be installed on any of the client operating system, Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 11. So there's an installation section. Uh, let's see what all installations are available. So on this server, we have performed a new SQL Server standalone installation. And there's an option to install SQL Server reporting services, management tools, data tools. So nothing is there to install specifically the SQL Server native client. Let me check on this. There are option to install data tools as well. Let me see how you can install SQL Server client tools. So let me do what are the client tools. So I'm opening a page from Microsoft.com site. So if you scroll through this section, so these are the graphical tools which you can install on the client side. So one of them is SQL Server Management Studio. I have installed this tool here as well. So we have a SQL Server Management Studio tool on the server itself. But yeah, this tool can be installed on the client machines as well to access the SQL database server. Another tool is the Azure Data Studio, which you can use to access the Azure databases. And there is a SQL Server Data Tools, which is a modern development tool for building SQL Server relation databases. You can go through these description. Another way you can access SQL Server is through Visual Studio. And there are command line tools as well, which can be installed on the client side to access SQL Server. So there are utilities like BCP, MS SQL CLI, MS SQL configuration, etc., etc. You can go through the documentation. So we will just discussing about we will just discussing about we were just discussing about the client tools that we have available for SQL Server. So you can bookmark this page and check it later on to see which all client tools are available. So let's go back to the SQL Server configuration manager. So let's see how much we have covered. We have covered almost like 22 minutes of this video. So let me see if I can cover some more details over here. All right. So let's discuss a little bit about managing the connections configuration, SQL Server connections from the clients. So we can configure SQL Server to allow the local, remote, and dedicated connections. So here we are connected locally to it through the SQL Server Management Studio. And let's close this one. So and this one is a local connection. We can connect from client machines as well. We can install the SQL Server Management Studio on the client machine itself as well. So we can configure the SQL Server installation to allow local, remote, and dedicated connections. So local connections are used by the applications running on the computer that has the database server or database engine installed on it. And remote connection can be used for clients connecting to the server remotely by applications running on other server as well. And also by other servers that are also running SQL Server. So connection can be from remote machine as well. And the third type of connections are dedicated connections. And this is a special diagnostic feature. I'm talking about dedicated connections. Those are used to diagnose problems and used by administrators to maintain the SQL Server installations where the standard connections are not possible. And this is a configuration feature which we can configure. All right, let's see what we can discuss next. So let's talk about connection types. So if we talk about local connections, they are more secure and have more security advantages. But we cannot always run SQL Server in this type of configuration where we use the local connection. So basically we need to allow for remote connections to come through remote clients and servers. So we need to permit certain protocols for that so that remote computers can make connection to our SQL Server. And this also affects the amount of resources used on the server, and it also basically compromise little bit security of the server as well, compared to if we are just using the local connections. So in order to enable the remote connections, we need to enable these protocols, the named pipes, either the named pipes or the TCP IP, or we can enable both as well. So right now this server is not configured to allow remote connections. Same for instance one as well. So only local connections are enabled, which is shared memory. And for remote we use name pipes and TCP, which are disabled on this machine. So let's talk about TCP IP. It's the widely used protocol. So TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol, and IP stands for Internet Protocol. So let's talk about ports that SQL Server uses for communication. So SQL Server uses the dynamic ports, static ports, or both type of ports as well, depending upon the configuration. And this version of SQL Server, Server 2019, it both supports the IPv4 and IPv6 addresses. And that also depends upon the SQL Server configuration. So basically TCP/IP is the ideal protocol to be used on the local area networks and the wide area networks. Another one is named pipes. This protocol is used basically for local LANs, not for wide area network. So if we have to allow network connections which are coming from beyond our local network, then yeah, we can enable TCP/IP. But yeah, if it's just limited to our LAN, then yeah, we can just enable the named pipes. So let's see what's next. So let's talk a little bit more about the named pipes. So they should not be used on the slow network connections. So these days network connections are not slow; they are pretty fast. So yeah, this can be enabled if we want remote connections from LAN or the wide area networks as well. But yeah, for wide area networks, enable TCP/IP. So the reason why name pipes cannot be used on slow networks is because it generates a lot of message traffic over the network. So generally it is not preferred over the slow connections. So each named pipes and TCP/IP requires specific and different ports to be opened across the firewall. So we can limit which protocol to be turned on to basically reduce the potential attack surface. All right. So every computer has a TCP/IP protocol installed on it. So let's see what all protocols are installed in here. So if we go to NCPL or CPL, it shows us the network connections we have here. So this one is the Ethernet connection. If we go into the properties of this connection to see what all protocols are installed. So here we have Internet Protocol version 4. So this is the protocol which is installed on every machine. So this is a common protocol which can be used. So if we talk about more protocols here, let's see what all we have. So if we have any other protocol, we can add it through here. So here we are just talking that TCP/IP is the widely used protocol, so should be available on every machine. And it basically uses the standard IP and the TCP/IP sockets net library. So TCP/IP has around like 65,000 ports, And SQL Server basically listen on TCP port 1433. So let me mention the port number. Uh, SQL Server TCP port number. So the port number is 1433, used by SQL Server for communications. Let's go back to the configuration manager. So this is basic 1433 is the default listening port for the default instance, not for the other instances. So the default listening port for other instances or the named instances is set dynamically unless it is specified manually which particular port to be used by the SQL Server configuration manager. So TCP port 1434 is used for client connections. So when named, so we were talking about TCP/IP. When we use TCP/IP protocol, it uses the TCP/IP sockets net library. Let me write that down. So make a note of this. So whenever we use TCP/IP protocol, it uses TCP/IP sockets net library, and whenever we use name pipes, it has its own specific library. So let me correct that. So TCP/IP name pipe uses named pipe net library. So each of the protocol has its separate library to communicate over standard network address. So in TCP/IP we have talked about the ports which can be used for communication, 1433 and 1434 for client connections. For name pipe, there's a specific network address convention. For name pipe, we use convention like this / dot pipe SQL query. This is for the default instance, and this is basically a network address used for name pipe. So this is just default instance network address. And there's another one for named instance, so we can use almost the same convention. So it uses MS SQL and then uses the instance name. For in our case we have instance 1 running on this machine, so we can type instance 1 then SQL query for the named instance. So it's named instance network address. Alright. So let's talk about named instance, name pipe, sorry. So name pipe require a range of ports to be open for communication across the firewall. So with name pipes, the server is listen on port 445. And for TCP/IP, it's 1433 and 1434. For name pipe, it's 445. So another protocol is shared memory protocol. This is used for local connections. Can be NWLink, IPX, SPX, AppleTalk, via. These are no longer supported. So shared memory is basically used for local connections, not the remote connections. So I think we can leave this video here. Don't want to overburden everyone on this video. So we will cover rest of the configuration part in our next video, uh, and that we will discuss about the, let's see what we will discuss about. We will discuss about how you can specify the shared memory network configuration. We will talk about this, the network configuration, both for the shared memory and the name pipe. We will show you how you can configure this configuration, and then we may talk about the TCP/IP configuration as well. So yeah, for this video we are limiting ourselves up to this, and we will cover rest of the configuration items later. So please be in touch, subscribe to this channel uh, to get the regular future update regarding my future videos, and you have a wonderful day ahead.